Hello, I'm Angela Kanwar. Welcome to the Spots of Time podcast. They say life happens, but as we know, it throws unexpected challenges, some big and some small. How do people overcome these hurdles? The Spots of Time podcast explores real life stories and how people successfully navigate and manage to move forward. So Carol, before 2020, could you kind of paint us a picture of what life was like for you in those preceding years?
Sure. I'm a body language expert and I've been in the top 10 globally for 9 years, which is quite something because you've got all the ex-FBI guys who go into business body language. So my speciality is in business body language. So I was traveling around the world. I've worked in 47 countries for people like Google, KPMG, here in the UK, Shell UK, those sorts of big companies, even in Serbia for Coca-Cola, because body language is so important. You know, it makes up normally about half of communication, and it certainly makes up our first impression of anybody is what we see. We might not even talk, and people have made up their minds about us within that first few seconds. So it's really, really important skill. And I love it, of course. And I've written a few books, including The Future of Body Language. So that's what I was doing for the last 22 years. And before that, I was a high flyer in companies like IBM and Data Point, which I tried to buy that company with a couple of other managers, unsuccessful. And that's when I started on my own.
So ultimately, a woman in control, a high flyer, very successful. But then in 2020, the pandemic hit and that turned lots of people's lives upside down. So what happened to you?
Well, I had a cough and I was getting weaker and weaker. And all the media was saying, don't trouble your doctors. And I was testing daily for COVID and it was saying negative. But there came a day when I could hardly walk and I coughed up blood. So I phoned the GP and the GP was 5 houses away from where I was living. It took me half an hour to virtually crawl there. And as soon as I got there, the GP put the stethoscope on my lungs, called for a blue light ambulance, and I was taken into the Royal London Hospital, which is a massive hospital in the East End. And as soon as I got there, they tested me for COVID and I had COVID. So I actually was admitted with 3 things: COVID, pneumonia and blood clots. And it's a bit of a riddle because only recently in the press, they've looked at COVID affecting your heart more than your lungs. But this is quite a new thing. But that's what happened to me. My lungs are scarred, but my heart is really damaged. I've had a pacemaker. I've got heart failure, which is a condition. It means you're dying, basically. So I've got that. And that's all come about since COVID. I had no problems. I was on no drugs. I was going to the gym, the Third Space gym in Piccadilly, 3 times a week. I'm the one that used to run up the escalator. And if you're in my way, I would elbow you because I was always in a hurry, basically. And I came out of hospital. I mean, the ward was pretty horrific. It was men and women, and you couldn't talk to each other because you had all things on your face. You were like bionic because you had all sounds. If anything went wrong, it would bleep, and we couldn't go to the toilet unless we used a bedpan, which I found horrid. Anyway, they released me after several weeks and I came home and I couldn't hardly move. I couldn't walk. I couldn't climb stairs. I was breathless. And at the very base level, they sent me home with a commode. And I hated using it, but I couldn't get upstairs to my bathroom. I had a house with 2 bathrooms. I couldn't get to either of them. And it's quite debilitating, just that alone. No matter that you're ill, that you can't finish a sentence because you need breath and have to stop. It was pretty dramatic stuff. I think more from my friends than for me, because I'm I'm a bit of a warrior, really. And so I've met a lot of situations in the past. I mean, I got captured when I was in Algeria and locked up, and there was a big guy walking backwards and forwards past this shed with a great big rifle. So I've been through quite a lot, and I think in a way that probably prepared me for this, because people expected me to be in tears and depressed, but as much as I could be, I was trying to be as normal as possible. But when you can't walk around, when you can't choose which toilet you use on the toilet, and there's someone coming in to make your breakfast every day, that does make you quite moody and quite aggressive. Because I used to have a poached egg on toast, used to be my breakfast. And one of the carers came in and she put a raw egg on a piece of frozen bread. I mean, that was the most depressing thing of anything, actually. I think that just deflated me, because there's nothing I could do. I couldn't go downstairs and make myself a piece of toast even. So whilst that was going on, I was being picked up more or less daily, going to different departments of different hospitals. Like I had a breast x-ray, a thyroid x-ray, a chest x-ray, a heart x-ray. They were really trying to find out why and how this had all happened. And it wasn't until later that they said it's all COVID, and then I kept, there's one point I missed out, actually. I kept fainting. So that was quite interesting, because I was living on my own and I kept fainting, and that was harsh. And it's quite interesting, the question they ask you, because I ended up at hospital several times after this. Do you remember fainting? And no, I didn't. I could only remember getting up or being awake in the hospital. And so they said, actually, what's going on is you're blacking out. And they took me back into hospital for another 13 days. And that's when they said they were going to fix me up with a pacemaker, which they did, basically. That's part of the heart problem. That's keeping me alive, because I'm 100% paced.
Yeah. And that stemmed all from COVID, all these different conditions and sort of horrible situation you found yourself in. You sound like a very practical minded lady. I think for everyone would react in a different way to those circumstances, because automatically your life changes literally overnight. So how did you deal with the initial diagnosis and then the practicality of day to day? What were you doing to try to make sense of it and actually cope in that situation?
I'd just like to go back slightly, because I said my house was 5 doors away from the doctors, the GPs. And so I didn't take my phone or anything, because I was so weak, and so when I was in hospital, I had nothing. I had no money, had no phone. So no one knew where I was. Because how many phone numbers do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah.
We don't anymore, do we?
No.
So the nurse said to me, one of the nurses said, you have to have someone know where you are. We have to ring someone. And so in the end, there was a coffee shop I used to go to more or less daily. So I rang them on her phone, and nobody answered. It was the answer phone. And I left a message saying that it was in Whitechapel Hospital, Royal London, and could someone arrange to collect toothbrush, hairbrush, shampoo, knickers, all sorts of personal things that you need when you're in hospital. And this was at a time when there was no visiting, so no one could come and see me. And one of the waitresses at that coffee shop delivered all these things with a note saying, I can pay her when I come out of hospital, which was amazing and really comforting, very kind. And we've become quite good friends now, even though she's quite young. So that was the first thing. So adapting was your question. How did I adapt? I suppose there isn't nothing else you can do. You have to get on with it. You can get depressed, because my GP asked me about that, if I was depressed and whether I'd been crying and things. And I said, no, not really. I'm too weak to do any of those things. It's enough to eat and to breathe, and at that stage, I couldn't complete a sentence. I had to stop and breathe. They've taught me to breathe a different way so that I can now speak like I'm speaking. And also, I think the thing was, I'd never heard of heart failure before. And when they told me that I got heart failure, I said, surely that means you're dead. And the doctor, just to give you how unsensitive they are, so you need to handle this as well. She said, no, it just means you're dying. And that's how she presented it to me. And I'm laying in bed with all these tubes everywhere. Have no idea. I've never heard of heart failure before. So the next thing I needed to do was to get my iPad and find out what heart failure was. And I managed to get the same waitress to do that for me. They held a key to my house at that coffee shop. So that's how she could get into my house. Goodness. So I think I'm probably more pragmatic than I ever imagined. And I think because I've lived on my own for some time now, I'm quite practical. So you probably don't want to know about the commode things, but I did some quite practical things about that. And also about eating, because I couldn't get down the stairs to the kitchen. And then you have a lot of time to think, because you're not moving around and people have to come and see you. I had a long time to think. And I thought, I can't stay here because I didn't know if I would get even a little bit better. I need to move. And everybody, all my friends went, no, you can't do that. That's very stressful. You cannot move. You have to stay here. You've got a garden. You're lucky. You've done the house out. It's a wonderful house, which it is. And you can't move. That's too much stress. Anyway, I took no notice of them. And spoke to an estate agent, and I said, the only problem is I will be here whenever you show anyone around, because I can't move about, So he found that quite amusing at first and didn't realise the seriousness of it, but we've subsequently become friends. So he took the house on. Unfortunately, I ended up back in hospital again. I ended up in Resus this time, and this is the first time I realised that it was really serious when I was in Resus, because they have two nurses, one either side of you, the doctor. They look nervous. They don't look calm. It was the only time I thought I might die. And then, so I sort of laid myself out in the shape of a cross and said I was ready to die because I'd had a good life. I'd been to 100 countries. I'd worked in 47. I'd been married and divorced. I brought up a girl. I didn't give birth to her, but I looked after her, and I'm godmother to her daughter. So I've had lots of experiences that many senior people start to try and do when they get older. They go and visit countries and things like that. But I'd done all that. I felt quite content. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to die, this is fine. And I offered myself up. They sent me to sleep with drugs and things. And I was very surprised when I woke up and I was still alive. And here I am 3 and a bit years later. So I think being ready to go, rather than use that word fighting to survive, is actually one of the things that helped me. Because if you fight, you're using adrenaline. If you just relax and say, okay, what is, que sera, sera, then you're not using any cortisone and your body can heal a bit. So that's what happened. I sold my house, but whilst I was in hospital, it was very, very sunny. And I've loads of plants. I can show you if you want me to turn the iPad. I'm mad about plants. I just
please do. Oh yes, I can see. Yes.
So I've got loads of plants. And I was in hospital, and the estate agent who'd sold my house by now took all my plants to his office because I was in hospital and no one knew when I was going to come out. And it was really hot, and he and his staff were watering them. And the stories he's told me since, you know, people were saying, have you started a nursery? What's going on here? But anyway, so he sold my house. I employed my friend's ex-husband to come and pack everything up for me and to get rid of things, give it to charity, put notes on people to come and collect things. People say, isn't that cathartic? Isn't it this? Isn't it that? But actually, in the state I realized I didn't need very much. I needed food, I needed clothes, I needed my plants. I couldn't let my plants go. And I used to paint a bit. I let all my paintings but two go and things like that. I just let everything go. I wasn't no longer worried about money because I knew my life was going to be shorter. I wasn't going to live for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I thought I'll plan for 8 years of money, but it's going to be shorter than that, unfortunately. But I planned for 8 years to live on the money from the sale of the house. And that's what I'm doing, really. And I've got this wonderful flat, as you've seen, on the river that I rent. And I've got a view of the Shard and Tower Bridge. And I just love it. Everybody loves it. And no one can believe that it was such a smooth move from the house to here. I had to stay a couple of weeks in a hotel. And I still couldn't walk very far. So I literally lived in the hotel the whole time.
Wow. Okay.
And then I got here, and now it's a year exactly I've been here. I can walk a bit now. I can climb 4 stairs. I can finish a sentence without gulping. I'm on masses of medication. And subsequently, I had another couple of heart operations. That's it, really. And quite by chance, I did a talk for a very large city company after 3 years of doing nothing and not even being able to stand up for that talk. I told them I'd have to sit down, so they'd have to have a chair, and was that all right? I also told them I couldn't get insurance because no one's going to insure you unless it's like millions of pounds with the conditions that I've now got. And they were fine. And the MD of that company is someone I did a course with 22 years ago. So she knew that I could do talks. She knew I had been ill. And it went really well, so well that I got on my way back to the flat, exhausted but high. I got a text from her saying, thank you, you smashed it, and a little kiss. And that's the first piece of work I've done since I've been ill. So that's inspired me.
It's quite a traumatic situation and circumstances that you've been through in terms of, as you say, barely being able to string a sentence together, barely walking. I mean, right down to the base level of how an individual could possibly function, I suppose. And quite a treacherous situation that you found yourself in. How have you processed it since that time? Because you seem to be, as I say, very practical based. You said not so emotional, but you must have been emotional at times. What toolkit, what mechanisms have you used to tap into?
The thing is, the breath is life source, isn't it? And I talk about that with body language as well, because without breath, you're dead, and you can only live without breath for 3 minutes. So on a practical level, I've been all the time trying to breathe better. And I used to talk really, really quickly. I don't talk slowly now, but I used to talk because I was moving at the pace I was talking at, was, as I said, running up the escalator with my rucksack, get out of my way. And so I think what happens is I assumed, although that at the moment I'm not in a wheelchair, that I would end up in a wheelchair and I would be pushed around. And that doesn't sit well with me. And I didn't know how I was going to cope with that. And like I said, I'd offered myself up to die because I thought that would be one of the things. But as my friends have said to me, there must be a reason why you're here, because twice you've been right on the border of dying and twice you've come through. So in terms of practical steps, I've had to slow down. I mean, I've got a cleaner, but if I have to make my bed, I have to do it in stages. I take the sheet off, then I have to sit on the bed. It's a very slow process. I'm ordering in lots more food. I used to cook for myself or go out to dinner. I still go out to dinner now, just started doing that. Deliveroo does very well out of me. So I do that. And I think that if you are going to be disabled or restricted in any way, the best time is now, because we've got those things. Your shopping can be done online. Your food can be delivered. You can choose which restaurant you want it delivered from. Dry cleaners will pick up your clothes. There isn't much you can't do online. And I had to get rid of furniture. I had a 3-story house. I'm living in a relatively small flat because I didn't think that I could move around very much. There's none of my furniture here at all. It's all gone. And people thought that would be dramatic, but actually it's quite refreshing because you don't have to worry about anything. In the house was a Georgian house, so it's a big house, and it had cracks at one time, so I had to fill them in. There were always things I was doing to that. Here I don't have to do anything. I just phone the landlord. There's a leak in the kitchen. Can you come and fix it? And, it's fixed. And so it's a much calmer way to live. Always with a house, there's always something to do if it's your own property. So I'm relishing the fact that I don't have to do anything anymore. I could anyway. And so that's one tool. Do nothing. Keep clean and get dressed and eat. I've started a charity as well. It's not registered as a charity yet, but it will be.
Yeah.
And it's for women with pacemakers, because in the olden days it was predominantly men that had pacemakers. And there are some very different situations between men and females' bodies. You have the cut is above your breast. So when you're healing, if you've got big boobs like I have, your boob is hanging down and pulling on the scar. So actually the best thing you can do is wear a bra. And you would think that would be the last thing. So no one told me that. I just did it and it worked. And then your bra strap actually rubs on your scar when you... So none of that is mentioned. So everybody who's female's got cotton wool under their left bra strap. No one tells you that. No one. So that's quite nice.
No, that is good. So you're practically minded. You keeping busy by doing things that you enjoy, but ultimately in periods of calm. Tell us about the swan meetups, because you say nature as well can be a really wonderful way to deal with the situation. You kind of absorb yourself into that and it takes you away from the situation you're in.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yes. So on one side I've got the river, on the other side I've got a canal, and on that canal are ducks and swans. And my goal was to be able to walk to that canal and feed the swans, which I can see from the balcony. I've been looking at the swans every day. I couldn't get near them. So I saw them. I saw one egg being laid, which was phenomenal. And I saw them just after they'd hatched as well. So it's been incredible. But feeding the swans has become, as you say, sort of a
daily ritual.
A ritual, yes. Yes, it is a ritual. You're right. Thank you. It's become a ritual. So I started feeding the swans, talking to them, and just being so grateful that I could be so near them. And there are other people in the area, because I didn't know anyone in this area when I moved here. I should have probably said that. I was starting talking to people who were also feeding the swans, and I was telling them stories about how I saw the egg being hatched and how I saw the babies, and I've got pictures, I've got a long lens on my camera and all the rest of it. So I began to be known as the Swan Lady. But they were just passing, wherever time I had the energy, because it's not always the same time every day, unfortunately, to go out and see the swans. I was different people all the time. So I wanted to capture those, what I considered friendships. And so I started a pub quiz. There's a pub, so I've got the river, the canal, and then further down there is a pub. So it's like a little triangle. And that's what's happened. I formed a pub quiz. I've got 16 people on my list, and the table only takes 6. So we go once a month. It is on every week, but we go the last Monday in the month because it'd be too much anyway. and we won one prize in that time. But I've made really good friends. I had a little party here for everybody who was on that list, and I still feed the swans. And after we've spoken this evening, one of the girls, Carolina, who's a Polish girl actually, she's bringing me dinner tonight because she's a heroine actually. She's amazing. And I went for the first time in my life last week to sketch with her. And it was a long journey for me. It's not very far away, but, you know, we had to get a cab and I didn't know how I'd be, and I was fine. It was amazing. And we got there, I sat down, I ate and things like that. And then we came back. It was an amazing, amazing night. I don't know if you've ever been to Sketch. It's a very interesting place. You must go. It's lovely. So she lives around the corner and her husband goes back up to Scotland once a month. So I see her that weekend when he goes back to Scotland. We have a little plans what we're doing. But it's really nice. So I made friends for the pub quiz, and now I'm beginning to meet those people besides at the pub. So it's all worked out really well. There was a girl who'd had a nervous breakdown and wanted to run to get over it, and she started a running club in her area. So it was really nice.
It just goes to show, like you say, being close to nature and also human interaction. You never knew any of these people, but over time you built this pub quiz and now they've become your friends. So that's really been an important part in your rehabilitation and connecting with people in your area, which is really, really good. And it's so good to see you, Carol, that you've actually come back from such traumatic circumstance in your life, and you've over time managed to, as you say, get back to some element of health there and you're working on it. And I'm really glad that you shared your story with us, and the fact that you're so practically minded and steely determination without a shadow of a doubt. How do you approach life now?
So I have to be careful how far I can go. Also, because I'm 100% paced with the pacemaker, which is unusual. Most people have a pacemaker that sits in their body and kicks in when their heart doesn't work, but mine's working all the time. I have a monitor by my bedside, which my pacemaker downloads to every night. So if there was anything going wrong with the pacemaker or going wrong with me, the hospital know every morning because they've got all the data. So I'm restricted with that as well. I could take it somewhere in the UK if I could plug it in. But I haven't been on a holiday or anything for 3 years because it's so difficult to get around. I don't tell everybody, but when we're in the pub, the chain I wear around me saying what's wrong, I've got some rubber bands on my arms. You know, if I fainted again, so the hospital know, or the ambulance people know what drugs I'm on, that I've got a pacemaker, that I am 100% paced. I wear them all the time now. I'm doing what I'm being told, which is also slightly unusual for me because I'm breaking down walls most of my life. But I realise I have to play the game now if I want to live. You know, it's not an either or. You have to do what they say, and then they'll do what they can for you. If you're asking me how other people could cope with this, I think everyone will do it differently, and it depends on what you've got around you. Because I've always been fiercely independent and traveling. I went to Java to study gamelan, which is Indonesian music and things like that. So I've done some quite dangerous things, you might call it, before. You know, I've worked in a rainforest and things like that. So I am adventurous. So I've always had to think about protecting myself, but actually surviving and achieving. And I think it's exactly the same. Your personality just continues through with whatever condition or situation you find yourself in.
Thank you so much, Carol. It's really been interesting talking to you, and I wish you all the best and continue living your full life that you're doing in the best way possible. Thank you.
Thank you for watching and listening. I have certainly taken great inspiration from today's podcast story and hope you have too. If you have a story you would like to share, get in touch via my YouTube channel, the Spots of Time podcast, and please do click subscribe or connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search Angela Kanwar.